Good morning and welcome to the Consciousness Cafe as part of our Wisdom Wednesdays, sponsored by SoulCall Ministries. And today I'm with the wonderful Achille Van Ricca. Achille is someone who spoke at an event that I produced called Inspiration Weekend. And that was several years ago. We've done the event for 5 years, and we probably had about 10 speakers each time, or 10 pieces done each time, spoken word woven in. And so that's about 50 times that someone spoke. And I can say that there wasn't anyone who was received or who impacted people greater than Achille did at Inspiration Gathering. So I'm so thrilled to be here with him this morning to share his wisdom with you. So welcome, Achille.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's just so true. Just remember very well. So I just love to spend time with young people. I have children of my own, as you know, but they're grown up now and they've got their own children. So checking in with your generation is really exciting for me. So just checking in about your soul call, because I know that you're in the arts and you've been in the arts. So tell me the story about you and the arts.
Um, yeah, the way I kind of got introduced to theater was that I was in this weird folk song repertory theater group from ages 7 to 10, where we wore period costumes and went around New England, doing the same 4 shows over and over again. And I kind of did it out of habit and not necessarily enjoyment. And then, and my mom really hated it. But then I went to the summer camp in Brookline and I did the musical there. And I was 11 turning 12. And I've always been the youngest person in my grade or in my age group because my birthday comes at the end of August. So the musical was usually ages 12 to 15. And I was still 11 and I was just getting out of 6th grade. And I was very sheltered and inward. I wasn't really trying to make new friends. I would just sit and read during all of the lunch periods and stuff. But we did Once on This Island that year, and it's a show all about Caribbean heritage, and the music is Afro-Caribbean, and there's also an Afro-Caribbean dance class at the camp, and the choreographer spent extra time with me to make sure that I got the steps and everything, and it was just I remember feeling the first time I really felt connected to a theater experience.
Mm.
And I just really loved it, and I kept kind of getting more involved in middle school, and then I devoted a lot of time to the arts in high school, through both spoken word, singing in choirs, and also performing in a lot of shows. And at the end of high school, which was last year, which is crazy, it's been about a year since I graduated, my friend Imani and I were the first Black student directors, and we produced directed a show called The Adventures of a Black Girl in Search of God. And it was all students of color, and it felt very similar to that first theater experience that I had that was really meaningful, where it was just community celebrating stories of color.
Mm.
And so yeah, then I, for the college process, I started the college process thinking I was going to be an English major at an HBCU, which, so I got into a school, Early Action, and I was well, I might as well just try and audition for schools and see what happens. And I got into a couple acting programs. So I chose Ithaca College because I had a really positive audition experience, and now I'm professionally pursuing acting, which is something crazy to say, but
Wow.
but it's been really fun. I'm also an education minor and a religious studies minor. So I'm excited about those aspects of my education too.
Well, interesting. So beautiful. So the first experience, that was interesting. You had a first experience that wasn't really something that you liked too much. It was more like an assignment. You had to go do it, right? And then but you tried again. What got you to go from that first not great experience to the next experience?
Yeah, well, the troupe I was a part of in elementary school, I really enjoyed performing, and I really loved dancing and singing and acting, but it was never stories that were about me, and they never,
Hmm. Hmm.
never really acknowledged race as a part of how the group operated at all. It was very much stories centered around white America.
You mentioned that one of your majors or minors is in religion, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's something that brought it all together for you. Tell me a little bit about that show, what it meant to you.
Yeah, I really love theater. I think has such a unique power to really stir up empathy in people and give people a window into lives and experiences that aren't their own. And that's the most powerful theater to me. But theater is very racist as an institution. It's funny. I actually like just finished doing a presentation for my college's theater department about the history of blackface and minstrelsy, and
Mm,
like, that's theater. That's American theatrical heritage, and it's directly responsible for so many of the stereotypes that are still like pinned on Black people today. Um, and it's but like representation is such a powerful force, and so the Adventures of a Black Girl in Search of God, my high school is about 4% Black, and the theater department is even less diverse. And so, in pretty much every show I had been in at my high school, I was one of two, maybe three on like a crazy year, cast members who were actually Black. And um, we just wanted to get more students of color into the theater program. But the Adventures of a Black Girl in Search of God is by a playwright called Janet Sears, and it's all about, well, it centers on this woman who is experiencing a divorce. She recently lost her daughter, and her father is on the brink of death.
mm,
And she feels so alone for the entire play. Um, but something I love, but I love the show because it really centers on the ancestors and on the spirit and the culture of Blackness as a living, breathing thing. Some of the ways that we blocked it were she would be crying, or she would be lamenting how alone she was, and someone would come up and touch her shoulder or hand or something, but she wouldn't really see it. And at the end of the show, she looks up after she's kind of like breathed a big breath of relief, and she sees all the ancestors kind of stretched out behind her.
mm, mm.
And yeah, I was really Imani and I worked really hard on that. And unfortunately, because of the way that racism operated in that school, like we were given weeks less rehearsal time. Our designers didn't really work with us. A lot of our creative decisions and ideas were undercut and second guessed in a way that like white directors never had to deal with. But we still put on a really good show, and I'm still really proud of it.
That's beautiful. So in spite of the obstacles, so you have a calling to tell the story, tell the history, and to be present. So you wanted more Black folk to be present at that school and to tell a story. Was it probably maybe even the first story that was really Black centered that happened at the high school?
Yeah, there were Reverend Dover was a theater teacher, I think 10 or so years before I was in high school. And she would like, get black kids to come and audition for theater. But after she retired, just, there wasn't really any effort to like keep those students. And the diversity just like shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And the plays got wider and wider and wider. And yeah, there weren't many. I was in a production of Clybourne Park in junior year, but Clybourne Park has two Black characters and five white characters. It was written by a white man. I love the director, but it was directed by a white man, and it was still just like white people telling our stories and not
Mhm.
us. So yeah.
So interesting. I can't wait to see what you continue to do, going forward with this, because I can tell there's lots of stories in there. When you're acting, and you also dance, right? So there's several parts to what you do. Do you sing? I don't remember if you sing or play an instrument or anything like that.
I sing kind of recreationally and I play instruments recreationally, but acting and dancing are my main wheelhouses. Yeah.
Great. So musicals are definitely in your wheelhouse.
Hmm.
Beautiful. And what are you working on now? What's going on at school now? I mean, I know you can't be there, but is it they're rehearsing on Zoom or?
Yeah, we funnily enough, we actually are going back because we're in like a really rural part of the country, so the cases there have evened out. But and they're giving us free testing and free quarantine spaces, and they're gonna have masks be a required policy on campus. They haven't been very clear about how they're gonna really maintain safety, so I'm waiting on that.
Mm,
But when everything got shut down, it was just so crazy because it was in the middle of spring break, and I remember like my girlfriend and we were like, all right, see you next week. And then we all just got kicked off campus, and we haven't gone back. So it's just like threw a wrench in everyone's plans. And yeah, I was in a production of Marie Antoinette that was very like movement based and like loosey goosey, like cool kind of expressionist theater type stuff. And it just very much turned into a stage reading. But what I'm doing right now is I'm on the police reform task force in Newton. So I'm trying to work like with the mayor,
This
and
is back at home. Like, oh yeah, got it.
I'm back where I grew up. And thankfully, all of the task force meetings will be on Zoom. So when I go back to school, I can stay doing that. I'm also in a Zoom production of She Kills Monsters right now. That's running out of the Laguna Playhouse in California. And hey, I don't need to travel, silver lining. Um, but for the college itself, we're in summer, but there's been a bit of a reckoning that's happened with the school because the theater department does have a history of like engaging in some pretty racist actions.
Mm.
So there's been open spaces twice a week where students can come and talk about their experiences, and we can figure out ways to move forward as a community. So I led two of the open spaces this week, and I did one, as I mentioned earlier, about the history of blackface and minstrelsy and how that's our heritage as American theater makers, and it's our responsibility to actively deconstruct that legacy. And the one I did earlier today was about confronting bias in yourself.
Beautiful. Such important work. Yes. And you're studying, in addition to the acting piece and the professional acting that's in your future, you're also studying religion. So what does that consist of?
Yeah, I took a great course for one of my gen eds this semester called Writing About Heaven and Hell, and we started with texts from ancient Babylon, like 4,000 years before the Bible, like Gilgamesh and Ketu in the Netherworld type stuff, and then we ended sort of in like 2000s Pentecostal American tradition, and we just looked at how humans have thought about the afterlife and considered, okay, what even comes next about life and death. And it really just caught my attention and interested me because I'm a man of faith myself. I'm a Christian. Um, and it was so interesting to learn about the Bible in a non-religious context because I feel really grateful that I was raised in a church where we had Hebrew scholars and a pastor who would say, hey, this was mistranslated, or hey, this verse is taken out of context usually. This is the original context around it. But something that really, really caught my attention was just how looking at these ancient religious texts shows how human they were and how human they are. Something that really struck me about Gilgamesh is that it's from, as I mentioned before, like 4,000 years before the Bible. And it's all about Gilgamesh having to reconcile with his own mortality. He goes, oh, wait, I'm going to die someday. And the other big element of Gilgamesh is his love for Enkidu. He just is in love and he has a soulmate, and Enkidu dies and he's forced to confront the fact that someday he's going to die too. And that's what so much media centers around now. Just like, oh, this person is gone. How do I deal with it? How do I deal with the fact that I'm going to die? And so just like having a connection and a through line to something that feels so ancient and foreign.
And how do you see it falling together? Because you're an activist, you're an artist, but you're also a person of faith. And so, and sometimes in the way people are taught the Christian faith doesn't necessarily include all those things. So you have your own way, your own path forward. So how does your faith inform your activism?
Yeah. My church really is a participant in liberation theology, which is reading the Bible through an activist lens. Something that I go back to a lot is the story of Moses and how a lot of times when African Americans would read a story about an enslaved group of people overcoming the odds and making it out of this horrifying circumstance, only to be in the desert for 40 years in another, harrowing circumstance, but still have to find a way to keep going and keep hoping and keep believing. It rings really true. I feel like there's a lot of parallels to what we're seeing today and the Bible. Something that I always think about is that Jesus was a Jewish man of color, and he was persecuted by the state and executed publicly for daring to defy an unjust system of law. And I think that interpretations of religion, specifically Christianity, has been used to oppress people for centuries. And it's something that I really had to reconcile as a Christian myself, be like, wow, the reason that I'm practicing my religion is because of slavery. Like, there's no way around it. But my pastor put it really well. He said that God is bigger than what men have done with God. And I truly believe that. I think that God is perfect and man is imperfect, and the Bible is imperfect man trying to capture the perfect word of God. And in that, there are biases and outdated ideas and things that need to be taken with a grain of salt, or at least taken in the context of the time. So I personally see my faith and my faith walk as part of uniting with that kind of moral arc of the universe that Martin Luther King spoke about, and it bending towards justice in a really powerful way. And I love art and I love theater, and I think that theater's ability to put human emotion and human stories on display and allow people to just really key in and feel it with the actor in real time is such a powerful tool for empathy. And I think that representation is not only important for um, marginalized groups, that we can go, oh, we finally see ourselves, we see something that feels true and feels right, so that also people that aren't a part of our groups can say, oh, I never thought of African Americans as nuanced and complex and multifaceted as this. um, Representation can really be a double-edged sword. It can be something as beautiful as Once on This Island. It can be something as harmful and deeply scarring as blackface. But when it's used right and when it's done with justice in mind, it can be really transformative.
Beautiful. Well, you are definitely a transformative agent. And I love the way you talk about the idea of God and the interpretations and getting clear about the God that's inclusive and that all of us are in that beautiful creation and loved by it. So, and you are certainly a shining light of all of that. So I so appreciate you and have learned so much just listening to you for these few moments. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.